Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. The New York Jets are 0-7. They lost to the Carolina Panthers 13-6 at MetLife Stadium, and there's been bad losses. There's been now 5 one-score losses for this team, and this loss in some ways felt the most depressing. And I think part of the issue is that there's just no life on this offense whatsoever. I think it's also just that there doesn't seem to be a lot of life on that sideline. I sit behind or on the side of the Jets sideline, and Robert Saleh was maybe a little over the top with his energy, but you saw the players cared. And the fact that we have players in these post-game press conferences and standing in front of their locker, Breece Hall saying that this is 4 years of stuff like this, and Justin Fields can't explain why they're not scoring on offense. It's really troubling to see just how much Aaron Glenn has let this team be deflated. This team being 0-7 joins the 1996 Jets and the 2020 Jets. Those are two of the most embarrassing seasons in franchise history. Both are related to the two worst coaches in franchise history, with Rich Kotite and Adam Gase. Both of those coaches did not survive those seasons, and not only were they fired, but they did not get head coaching jobs ever again in the league. I don't think it's fair to lump Aaron Glenn into that, especially because he's a rookie head coach. But all fans want to see, and I'm sure all Woody Johnson wants to see, and Darren Muji wants to see, and these players want to see, is progress. And there's no progress, especially on offense. On defense, they played well today. The Panthers aren't world beaters. They do now have a winning record. They have a 3-game winning streak. They have 2 nice running backs. Bryce Young is a serviceable quarterback, although he shouldn't be beating you in games, and this wasn't the defense's fault. But where there's no progress is on offense for sure, and in Aaron Glenn's decision-making. So let's start with Aaron Glenn. Captain Accountability, as I like to call him, talked about how leading up to the season, the 4 minutes at the end of each half is all about coaching. And they've been terrible at the end of each half. And he stood there last week and said, I stand by those decisions. Basically, they were the right decisions, but it was poor execution. So he blames the players. He takes no blame whatsoever. And last week against the Broncos, he watched the seconds count away of the first half without trying to put the ball towards the end zone at all. Probably because he was afraid of his quarterback throwing the ball. Maybe because he didn't realize what was happening. And then a week passes, and Aaron Glenn does the same exact thing today against the Panthers. And his answer makes no sense. He said that because they were sacked 2 times before, he just wanted to get into the locker room. You haven't scored a touchdown in the first 3 quarters of any game since week 1. You need to be doing anything possible to get the ball into the end zone. And if you're going to give up on a half, because you probably know you're going to be benching Justin Fields at halftime, then that just means you made the wrong decision playing Fields to begin with. If you didn't trust him to throw the ball, and again, he just looks afraid he cannot throw the ball, then he shouldn't be out there. And he does bench Justin Fields. 1 week after saying that Brian Costello's question was ridiculous, he then does the very thing that Brian Costello was talking about. So it went from ridiculous to reality in a week. And you can't tell me that it takes that little time to figure out you need to do that. So again, Glenn doesn't really seem to understand what's happening in real time, and he doesn't seem to have a plan. And that's the scary part. And with all the reports this week that Woody Johnson's not going to make any moves, and those are all articles that you read right before a coach gets fired. They're trying to give some support to him. Aaron Glenn is a good guy. Aaron Glenn is a Jet. He comes from the Parcells tree, yada, yada, yada. The reality is it is all about results. And the results this year are so much worse than they were in previous years. And they're so much worse than they were just last year with a team that, sure, is not as talented offensively, but it's not that different. The team isn't that drastically different. Obviously, a different quarterback is a big deal, but Aaron Rodgers didn't play well in the beginning of last year. And this team is 0-7 now. This team is the laughing stock of the NFL. there is no hope when they have the ball. And when we talk about Glenn looking clueless and not having a plan, that very first drive where they're moving the ball a little bit and he goes for it on 4th and 5 within field goal range, it's 52-yard field goal, which Nick Folk can hit easily. He goes for it on 4th and 5. Now, Fields hasn't been able to move the ball at all now for 5 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it's been, and you're going to have him try to complete a 4th and 5 when you just need to get on the board. Take those points early. If you don't have anything and you got 3 in front of you, grab it. This game sat at 3-3 for a long time. You could have been playing ahead. And he goes for a 4th and 5, and Justin Fields makes such a bad pass on a slant. It goes so far wide of, I believe it was Josh Reynolds, that the crowd didn't even boo. The crowd was stunned. You couldn't believe how bad of a throw that was. And you didn't really realize what happened, and all of a sudden the Jets are back on the sideline. And again, with a timeout in his pocket and the clock winding down in the first half, they get the ball into Panthers territory. They take 2 sacks, but with 10 seconds and a timeout, he just lets the clock tick away. And that's embarrassing. You're not even trying. And I don't know what Glenn is trying to build here. And I don't know if this is part of some bigger plan of, hey, I'm not going to let Fields embarrass himself maybe and throw an interception in the I really have no idea why you would not call a timeout there and just throw one into the end zone. It just doesn't seem like he has a plan at all. And then he at least makes some decision, and he brings in Tyrod Taylor, and Taylor throws 2 interceptions. One was a really impressive one-handed interception in the end zone, although it was a bad throw, and the other was a 50-50 ball to Josh Reynolds, in which Reynolds had no position on the sideline whatsoever, and pretty much ends the game, although they would get another crack at it. But Taylor at least moved the ball. Taylor was outside the pocket making plays and still throwing the ball downfield. The offense looked like it was moving, and yes, he had 2 interceptions, and yes, Justin Fields hasn't thrown a pick all year. It's because Justin Fields is afraid to throw the ball. There is nothing about Fields' game right now that he looks comfortable, and then the poor guy, they finally give him a design run, and he gets his bell rung. He gets put in the blue tent probably to check for a concussion after he gets hit really hard, and he just doesn't have it. And Fields right now just does not have it. And if you are Aaron Glenn and you're trying to make sure you don't lose this team, you need to start Tyrod Taylor next week. You just have to do it. It is not fair to the other guys on that team to start this game again with no hope to score. And you're about to go to the Bengals now with Joe Flacco, and you're telling me Joe Flacco wouldn't love to drop 40 points on the team that said basically he was washed up 3 years ago, and since then he's taken a team to the playoffs, and everywhere he goes, he puts up points. So that needs to happen next week. But what also needs to happen is Aaron Glenn needs to find a way to show that there's any reason to be confident in his abilities as the head coach. Because 0-7, that is a special type of bad. And yes, 5 of these games now are 1-possession games. It really just highlights how bad it's been. You take away the game against Pittsburgh, and you take away the half that Tyrod Taylor gave you against the Bucks, 2 teams that are in the playoffs, by the way. They've really shown you nothing. And it's good that the defense has been better, and Jermaine Johnson has looked really good, and Quinnen Williams had a good day today. The secondary looks so much better. And again, they're not playing great passing teams, but the secondaries look better. You have to give them credit. We're killing Steve Wilkes for 3 weeks. You got to give that guy credit for shoring things up a little bit. But this offense hasn't scored a touchdown in the first 3 quarters since week 1. Since week 1, they haven't scored a touchdown until they're down 14 or more points. It is so unbelievably bad. And this team sounds like a group of players that have already grown sick and tired of the message they're hearing from Aaron Glenn. And it's not working. Fields on the day, 6 of 12 for 46 yards, took 3 more sacks. And he's just got no juice to him. He's running around a little bit, but every completion was getting a Bronx cheer. It was just it was a sad performance, really. And you knew that you're going to end up benching him, and you wait till halftime because I guess it's the cleaner way to do it. And Taylor goes 10 of 22 for 126 and 2 picks. And the big one, the incompletion that really hurt, was they run a kind of a version of the Philly special Tyrod is lined up at wide receiver. It's like a handoff end around back to Taylor, and he has Allen Lazard wide open. And for some reason, he takes a peek at him first, and then he throws it, and the ball is way late, and it's 10 yards short. On the very next play, he's got someone streaking down the seam, and he throws it too late, and it's a disaster in the end zone. So Taylor wasn't perfect, but at least he's throwing the ball downfield, and at least he's trying. Overall, if the Jets lose next week to the Bengals, and there's no reason to think that they won't, it's going to be a really long 2 weeks as you get through the bye week for Aaron Glenn. The fact that Aaron Glenn has to really defend his position and having this job is sad because it seems like it could come to an end. And, a lot of stuff going on Twitter about the other coaches that might be available to bring in as head coach. And, I don't want any part of Matt Nagy or Arthur Smith, don't get me wrong, but if this guy is the wrong guy, it is irresponsible to bring him back. And that brings me to Darren Muji, because they're a group package, right? I think almost every decision is made by Aaron Glenn on this team. I think Muji's along for the ride, but Muji's made some really good trades, and the draft picks, we will see. But what kills you is, this team walked into this season with no number 2 wide receiver. And God bless Josh Reynolds. He's trying out there. He's putting out an effort. He's a serviceable, depth receiver, but he can't be your number 1 when Garrett Wilson is down, and he shouldn't be a number 2 receiver. And part of the problem with Tyrod today is he's got nowhere to put the ball. Guys really aren't open. Mason Taylor had a rough day today. He has a bad drop. But Darren Muji allowed this team to walk into the season really, really hurting with talent. And the one draft pick that looks rough right now is Arian Smith, because they can't get anything going with him. He's the speedster. He's not showing any of the ability that he promised in college. Overall, Tyler Johnson had 3 catches and 60 yards. Mason Taylor, 3 catches. Josh Reynolds. We had to watch Allen Lazard. He had another pre-snap penalty, by the way. But Muji deserves blame for how little talent there is on offense. And the offensive line really struggled today, but they have been okay. But they gave up a ton of pressure against the team in the Panthers that had a terrible time of creating pressure with the quarterback all year. So do you keep Muji if you move on from Glenn after 1 year? I don't know. I really don't know. You'd love to see patience and you'd love to see Glenn get time, but I'm a firm believer that if you know for sure that this isn't the guy, then you have to move on. And you could very well have the first overall pick in this draft, and it's something like the last 4 or 5 first overall QB picks had their head coach fired in their first year, and that is not how you breed consistency. So if you're going to try this again and clean house, I think you got to do it the right way. And although it's embarrassing, you can't have another season like this next year. And maybe Glenn turns it around. Maybe this team turns it around. Maybe Tyrod is the quarterback from here on out. They win a few games. It's not as ugly and you see progress. But it's hard as a head coach to see your mistakes be so recognizable. And Glenn's mistakes are really clear. And he's not learning from them at all, and that's scary. So, a brutal loss at MetLife. Fall weather lasted like 20 seconds in the morning, and then it was a warm day at MetLife Stadium. It was just a boring, bad football game. And credit to the Panthers, they're 4-3, and they're showing some fight. Before I recorded this, I saw the Giants lose a heartbreaking game, but at least they're showing something, and Jackson Dart looks like a guy. There's no one playing football as poorly as the New York Jets are playing football right now. And that is a direct reflection on Aaron Glenn. He's got his fingerprints all over this team. So does Darren Muji. So the New York Jets are 0-7. They go to Cincinnati next week. They're on to Cincinnati to face their old friend Joe Flacco, who just beat our other old friend Aaron Rodgers on Thursday Night Football. They're going to be a rested team, and I'm sure they're all excited to see the Jets come into their stadium because the Jets are not a team you need to worry about at all. So, 0-7, we'll head on to Cincinnati this week. This has been episode 24 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. Thank you for listening.